the efficiency with which we live. We can increase, for instance, patterns of living so that people live nearer where they work, so that they use more public transportation. So, in effect, we use less energy. And it seems to me that this is where much more of our focus of our attention should be. Not where do we get new energy sources, but how do we change our lifestyles? How do we change how we live in ways that reduce our environmental footprint, that reduce the impact that we have on the environment, including reduce the amount of energy that we use.
The single most important need is to first bring down the overall consumption level of energy. And only after one has brought down, it makes sense to speak about new sources. Energy is used in a rather wasteful fashion.
Energy conservation has a huge role to play.
How many people can we keep on this planet and still maintain a sustainable way of life?
It is likely that the world will continue to increase to around 9 billion people.
The use of energy has got to be redistributed. The most important energy source is intelligence. Intelligence in the sense to be able to use given energy amount much more cleverly, much more prudently, much more efficiently. In many ways, energy is used in a rather wasteful fashion.
There's no free energy. Every energy we harness comes at a price. Wind power. People think it may harm bird migrations. Hydropower has a devastating consequence in some areas if it's done too large scale. Solar power takes a lot of energy to produce these energy collecting devices, and also some particular photovoltaic may be using highly toxic materials in order to produce these very effective, highly efficient photovoltaic cells. So nothing comes for free. Probably the best energy source is, as Amory Lovitz calls, the negawatts. That means the way how to reduce our demand, how to provide our demand using conservation or just being more efficient in the use of energy.
Today we know to have light bulbs that use only a tenth of the energy with respect to the light bulbs which are conventionally used. A given car engine today can drive a car 100 kilometers at a much lower level of gasoline consumption than the cars 30 years ago. All the buildings we have in a country, and each building is a container of energy, because either the building are heated from the inside or they are cooled from the inside. And it's crucial how efficient in terms of energy the skin of the buildings is. Another important area, of course, is transport. There are many ways to organize transport in a more efficient way, not only in terms of engines, but of course also in terms of, let's put it that way, of course, better public transportation, better information, people know where to go, how much time you need to make it much easier to use public transportation systems.
There are ways how we can have fantastically great futures and good lives. It depends on very significant investments. One is to build our cities in much more resource efficient way. Lots of electric bicycles, you have lots of use of subways and trains, very compact cities, people can walk around. This kind of city experience is possible, much more resource efficient, much more healthy, much cheaper, more aesthetically pleasant. It's all in our reach. I'd rather be planning ahead, building our nirvana here, rather than be forced out of cars just by the physical reality of oil becoming too difficult and too expensive to be pumped out of the ground.
Then there's the question of population. How many people can we keep on this planet and still maintain a sustainable way of life? We have 6 billion human beings on the planet today. The United Nations projects that we're going to go to 9 billion people in the 21st century.
The peak of population will be reached around 2040, 2050.
It is likely that the world will continue to increase to around 9 billion people. Population grows and can grow very rapidly, and this is a problem facing Africa, facing several of the developing countries around the world.
Slowly shrinking our human population in a way that is actually not detrimental to people, so in a smooth way, finding ways to reduce human population on the globe slowly, is probably one of the most humane and comfortable ways to face the ecological limits that we are confronted with in the 21st century.
And we've learned something about population. We have learned that when people become wealthier, they have access to electricity, they have access to education, they have access to literacy, their families become smaller.
There are natural forces that as countries' income grow, their reproduction rates decrease.
Second thing is to invest, particularly in women, to help them have great lives at the same time, slow down population growth and reverse it.
If we want to begin to see a curtailing of population, we have to support the Third World Women's Movement. And to do that, they have to have access to electricity. That's what helped liberate women in the Northern Hemisphere in the 19th and 20th century, so they could go to school and become literate and could control over their bodies and their lives. And then they have smaller families because they're in control of their destiny.
By investing in women, we can turn around the population growth to one that is slowly shrinking in very humane ways, in very productive ways.
It isn't just about the developing world. It's not so much only about how many people are populating this planet. It's also about how much energy each person's using. Because we Americans, for example, use much more of the Earth's resources and energy per individual than people that are living in the Southern Hemisphere, in the poorer countries.
The first question is, who is using energy today? So that's an issue of distribution. The use of energy has got to be redistributed in the world, meaning that those who have little are bound to have more, and those who use energy in an excessive fashion today are bound to have less.
The developing countries face a much harder task because their levels of income have been suppressed, their levels of consumption have been suppressed. They're asking simply to get to a decent standard of living. And as they go from where they've been to where they would like to be, they will have more expenditures on housing, transportation, all of which are energy resource intensive.
The use of energy is vital for reaching a certain minimum level of livelihood. Abolition of misery requires more energy.
In the developing countries, we have to help our brothers and sisters by getting this third industrial revolution technology all over the world, because then people can control their own power where they live.
And here it is important that countries that once upon a time have been called underdeveloped countries are not simply imitating the fossil energy path of the northern countries, but as soon as possible embark upon a path towards renewable energies for guaranteeing energy to a large part and the majority and maybe all of the world's citizens.
We talk about social rights and human rights, but there is one critical human right that has never been coded in any fundamental charter of human right. And that is every human being, in fact, every creature on the planet, has a right